in the Urban Fantasy Track Room earlier tonight, so I'm sorry if y'all missed out.
That's called rubbing it in.
It was all going at the smaller panels.
Yes, another audience got chocolate, not you.
But see, they get you guys,
I have a
so...
good time every night. That's what this DragonCon shit's all about. Oh.
Yeah, James is here. Somebody swore already, so...
We're just testing, the 5-second delay.
I don't see any DC TV. Are we on DC TV tonight? No. Fuck yeah.
Yeah, it's a late-night panel, and yeah, it's not a panel until James can say that. So okay,
That's
just
every
saying.
panel you'll attend all weekend too. If I'm not there to say fuck yeah, I'm sorry, it's not really a panel.
Only after 10 o'clock at night on this crowd.
Lauren Gilman's my proxy, wherever she's at.
Fuck yeah.
Here you go.
I just find the yeah superfluous. I find that fuck stands on its own.
Well, let's see. We only have a few people left who haven't said it yet. Linda, you might be the only one, and me. I'm like,
No, Linda will. What are you talking about?
fuck yeah. Very good. Okay, now that everybody's gotten it out of their systems, so to speak, welcome, everyone. How many of you were at the Urban Fantasy Track 10 o'clock panel this morning? Okay, all right. So we're glad that you stuck around, so thank you very much. And welcome to the Enchantment, the Use of Magic in Urban Fantasy panel. We're very glad you're here, and we're very glad our panelists are here. So, what we are going to do this evening is that I am going to have each of them introduce themselves to you briefly, and then I have several questions that I am going to ask them, and hopefully they will, answer. But in any case, then we will have some time at the end for you guys to ask some questions as well. So we will start with David, who I think shares a mic with me.
So when Jim and Laurel introduce themselves, they're going to say their names and you all are going to clap. So I'm going to say my name and you all are going to clap. So, my name is David B. Coe. I am the man. Under that name, I've written a dozen epic fantasies for tour books. I'll be coming out with a new contemporary urban fantasy for Bane in January. And as D.B. Jackson, I write the Thief Taper Chronicles, with tour, a historical urban fantasy set in pre-revolutionary Boston.
I just picked up your book. I just bought your book.
Oh, cool. I'm done.
Using the mic drop right here. Hi, I'm Jim Butcher. I'm the author of the Dresden Files.
Following that, James R. Tuck, I write the Deacon Chalk series, and I have a bunch of shit coming out in 2015, so look for Robin Hood Demon Slayer and Champions of Hollow Earth, and Mama Tried, an anthology of crime fiction about outlaw country songs. I'll have some comic book work in Bela Lugosi Presents Volume 4, 5, 6, whenever we get it done. So, there's shit coming.
My name is Laura Ann Gilman. I'm the author of the Coast of Nostradamus novels, the Retrievers series, Paranormal Scene Investigations, and Sylvan Investigations, and also the Nebula-nominated Fine Art War trilogy. And next year I'll be coming out with a new series called The Devil's West from Simon & Schuster.
Hi, I'm Laurel K. Hamilton. I think Jim had the right idea, so.
I'm Linda Robertson, and I write the Persephone Alchemy series for Pocket. There are 6, and it's witches, werewolves, vampires, a menagerie of animals, and oh my, and
Cleveland.
I was just going to shout out loud, but okay. What I'd like you to do, if you would, is to briefly describe for the audience, tell us a little bit about the magical system of your world. And if you write more than one book, you can pick just one, or you can tell us a little bit about a couple.
Okay.
Linda doesn't like it when I ask her first.
Okay. The magic system in the Thief Taper books, the biggest challenge in writing historical fantasy is trying to do stuff that isn't going to seem anachronistic, that isn't going to grab my audience and pull them right out of my setting. And so for the Thief Taper books, which are set in colonial Massachusetts, in Boston, I wanted to do something that was going to resemble contemporary 17th century or 18th century accounts of witchcraft, so that my sorcerers would live in constant fear of being hanged as witches, which of course was still happening in the 1700s. So the magic system basically consists of incantations in Latin, usually the drawing of blood in order to fuel the spell, and the communing with a spirit, a ghost from usually an ancestor of the conjurer who is able to give them access to the portal between the living world and the realm of the dead, which is where, that boundary is where magic exists. So, communing with spirits, speaking in tongues, doing blood magic, it's witchcraft. Except my character spends the entire series going, I'm not a witch, I'm a conjurer. And so it's not witchcraft. But in resembling witchcraft, I was able to do something that A, put my character in mortal danger all the time, and B, took probably the most anachronistic element of my world building and made it seem as though it belonged in colonial Massachusetts, since there was a history of fear of witches at that time. And that was the point of the magic system.
For the Dresden Files, I wanted to write a wizard, but I didn't really, I didn't want to do kind of a Kenobi-esque or Gandalf-esque wizard where you didn't get to know what he was doing, where he would just occasionally pull something out of the hat and boom, you don't get an explanation except wizard. So, yeah, I didn't want to make Dresden, you know, this kind of shamanistic, mystic. I wanted to make him more like a plumber. I wanted to make him kind of a more blue collar guy, and I wanted it to feel like what he was doing was not really so much wizardry as it was engineering of a type that the rest of us just can't really handle or do. So magic was going to be something that had a lot of actual rules to it. And so when I was putting together the magic for the Dresden Files, I'm like, okay, this is what human magic is like. They've got to take it, they've got to bind it to, you know, they've got to take this energy and they've got to put it within this framework of something they can understand, and that's what lets them be able to do it. So you can actually do formulas in math with magic in the Dresden Files. And then occasionally he gets to run into stuff that he doesn't get or doesn't understand, and that's fine. But I wanted to start it there. I wanted to start it and actually base the magic off of Newtonian physics and applied several similar principles. You know, energy can neither be created nor destroyed, and conservation of energy and conservation of mass and so on. So, yeah, that's that.
In the third Deacon Chalk book, Blood and Magic, strangely enough, has magic in it. But in the Deaconverse, magic is always bad. It's the witches that show up in book 3 are just evil. They do satanic magic. It's really fucking throwback to old Hammer movies, you know, where the witches are all like, but they have their characters. They have, you know, their own stuff and everything. But if you start, well, I mean, they have their motivations. They're not mwahaha into the plot. But do I? Oh, sorry. That's my question. But I did a lot of influences from where I grew up. Because I grew up, you know, in the 80s, basically, the 70s to the 80s, when they had the satanic panic, you know, all that shit, you know, where fucking kids were getting satanically abused and all that crap that was going on with Geraldo. of all that shit. So that was formative shit for me. So that really became...
Doesn't get more satanic than Geraldo.
That really influenced what I did with the witches when they showed up, and that in Santana, because there's a witch that speaks backwards to do her spell. Because I fucking love that shit. Represent. So yeah, that was the big thing, and I make a real big distinction that these are not Wiccans. Wiccan is absolutely like completely separate. It's a real thing in Deaconverse with like those are good people. Those are not these people that are doing bad shit.
I tend to very much like logical systems that fit within the natural world and the modern world. My own OCD insists that I be able to believe that these systems could actually work logically. So in the Costa Nostradamus novels, magic is based on electricity. It runs alongside both external and the internal electricity that our bodies uses. Yeah. I'm a writer.
You are a writer with a flask.
It will, actually, that our bodies use. And that's how somebody becomes a talent, if they have the ability to channel this electricity and make it do things for them. But like any electricity, it's also extremely dangerous. If you use too much of it, you do what they call overrush, and you fry your system. So there was this very real purpose and risk built into the ability, which built every plot had that excess danger along with it. For the Vine Art Wars, I managed to combine two of my pleasures, logic and wine, and it's wine-based magic. The grapes, the soil goes into the grapes, they make the wine. Each wine has a incantation that you then decant. It was fun because that made magic not into a skill but a commodity. And it was very much a market-based commodity, which was also fun to play with, but because then there was very much a price value put on it.
That's really cool, actually. When I started doing the India Blake series, I wanted to have us all wake up tomorrow and have everything that goes up in the night be real, and have modern society deal with it. I didn't realize that nobody had done that. At that point in time, all the vampires, werewolves, all the magic was super secret. I even had the first book rejected because one editor said it wasn't scary because my vampires were out of the closet. You know, she didn't even have the sense of humor to say out of the coffin. So that was the jumping off point. It's our world with Oreos and Nikes and everything else, except with the addition that all the monsters, all the magic, all the stuff that you used to watch in the old Hammer films is real. And then I thought, okay, that's great. I think that's fun. Now give me some magic that feels just as real as me getting in my car and driving down to the market. So I started researching voodoo. I prefer the term vaudin, and I started researching that, and I didn't know anything about it. But I wanted my main character to raise the dead. I wanted to have a system that was based on something real. Now, there are no shambling movie zombies in real voodoo. Repeat, there are no shambling movie zombies in real voodoo. I know this. I've done my research. I actually had a practitioner, when I had about half a dozen books out, come up and say, I love your books, and this is my religion. You're writing about my religion. I said, I'm so sorry. I know there are no shambling movie zombies in your religion. And he says, well, no, but it's so cool. So take something that's real, take something people believe, and then take that logically one step further. That's what I like to do with all my magic systems. I did the same thing with the Mary Gentry books. I did my research in Celtic mythology. And then I thought, okay, if this is absolutely true, and all the big bad fairies are true, what then? What does that change what does that change? I'm actually, if I go back and visit this again, I'm wanting to scatter the magic in the human world more. because everybody in fairy deals with it too logically. It's okay. Okay, that wall dissolved, and now we have a different place and time, and it's okay. No, I want somebody to go, motherfucker, oh my God, what happened to my wall? And Mary is never going to do that, and none of the guys are ever going to do that. So I got to have us some characters next time we visit who can go, oh my God, this is really cool. And that's the big thing for me. The magic has to feel is intrinsic to the world, and real is the clothes you put on your back. If the magic ever feels false, or like I'm adding it for shock value, then I throw it out. I got to start over. I am Wiccan, and I have written about people who are Wiccan in my books, but I've also written about witches, because not all witches are Wiccan, and it's an important distinction when someone says they're a witch. Ask what kind. I'm not joking. Everybody's looking at me like, oh, duh. But, just because everybody says they're a witch doesn't mean they're Wiccan. And everyone who says they're pagan doesn't mean they're Wiccan. There's all sorts of flavors. And just because we're just like everybody else, we pagans, they're good ones and bad ones. Are you a good witch or a bad witch? Come see, come saw. No, sorry, I'm pointing to witch. But that is for me. That's the big thing. Your magic has to feel real no matter what it is, no matter how fantastical it is. And to the characters, and you have to come away believing, at least for a moment, a second. The reader has to come away believing that could happen. And isn't that cool? So, and you're looking at me.
I'm making sure you're done.
I'm done, I promise.
For Persephone, when she casts a spell, it basically influences the everyday energies to create a change that the energies that are already naturally flowing. But if you tap a ley line, you're affecting something right now. Whereas a spell affects something you're asking for a future change. The ley line is more immediate. Well, everybody wants to cast a spell and have it happen right now. But there's a cost. There's pain involved with tapping the ley line, and after you get past the pain, it feels really, really good. So it gets addictive, and you got to be careful that you're not in there much. But as her power grows and her connection with her goddess grows, she's put in positions where she has to use more and more of the ley line magic. So we'll see where we all get to the end with what she has to deal with.
Well, that's a teaser. What would you say is the single biggest risk of magic use in the world of your novels? The biggest price?
Making it too easy for them to get what they want.
Do you mean from a writer's point of view or a character's point of view?
For the character's point of view, yeah.
The biggest danger in Anita's world, for Anita personally, is that not to become a monster yourself. That as you grow in power and as does the ultimate power corrupt, that kind of thing. And she's always worrying, am I going to become a monster? Am I going to go too far? Do we have too much control? And I think the more power you have, the more you should be. If you're not worried about that and you're gaining power, then eventually you will become evil, or at least amoral, and amoral looks evil if it's trying to hurt you.
In the Coast of Nostradamus, as I mentioned, the great fear is what they call whizzing. I never met a pun I didn't like. Just accept that now. But it is very serious. It's because there is so much what they call current running through you. You can fry not only your body but your synapses as well. And what you get is somebody who's immensely powerful because they have no filters, but is quite mad. And you run into a couple of cases of this where somebody is going to do immense damage either because they didn't mean to, or simply because they get pissed and they have no control. And it's the responsibility of the community to either take care of these people or to put them down. And it's considered a very solemn responsibility to make sure that people are safe from somebody who has gone overboard.
Yeah, in the Deacon verse, everything's kind of based on Catholic mythology. So the price really is your immortal soul. Magic is evil. The more you use it, the deeper you get, the darker you get, the more you're in danger of, like, dying and going to hell. So, pretty serious shit. It's not something to take up on a Tuesday and try to put it on a Wednesday.
I think in the Dresden Files, the worst thing that you can get with magic is what you wished for. Because that can be really horrible. And it followed closely by unexpected consequences. Because those are, or rather unintended consequences. Because those are things that always come around to get you. They always do.
Well, again, in the Thief Tinker books, the biggest danger associated with magic is being accused of witchcraft and hanged as a witch.
Not even blood loss.
Right, but right. There's blood use, and so you don't want to overdo that. But the other danger is, and I deal with this in the first book in the series. The other kind of magic you can do if you don't want to take your own blood and you're really looking for a big spell is you can take the life of another, and that begins a spiral down into darkness that is pretty serious for the conjurer involved. And of course, I put my hero in a position of being forced to take a life with a spell in order to fuel another spell. And he has to live with the consequences of that, including the equating in his own mind of his own actions with the villain he's fighting. And so there's a morality cost, and that can sometimes be the worst cost of all.
Is there a particular aspect of the magic that you use in your books that has maybe morphed a little bit? If there's a particular aspect of the system that has changed a little bit since you first began, when you first incorporated it, maybe it's gotten more intense, or it's something you decided you didn't like so much, so you kind of backed off on it? Has there been anything like that?
Oh crap, you're going to make me go first.
Linda's already hiding now.
Yeah.
Don't see me.
No.
It isn't so much that the magic is morphed as much as just over the course of writing like 15 novels now for the Dresden Files, you find yourself asking more questions, and you find the fans asking questions, questions. And yes, I see you. Okay. And in the course of answering these questions, a lot of times I don't know the answer to the question until somebody asks it to me, and then it's like, oh, obviously I know the answer to this because I put the world together and I know how the nuts and bolts work. And so most of the time I go, yeah, right, okay, I know how that works, and then I have to decide whether I'm going to share that. But there's a lot of stuff that I did not know at the start of the Dresden Files that I didn't learn until I was writing it or until somebody asked me a question about it, and then I went, oh, okay, now I got it. But it sort of slotted into place right away in my head. So there's a whole bunch of things going on in my head that, I try not to ask too many questions of what's going on in there. Honestly, yeah, because honestly, it seems like I don't need to know. Evidently, because when I need it for a book, there it is. When somebody asks me an answer, there it is. And I think that's on a need-to-know basis. And most of the time, just walking around, I don't need to know.
That's hurting your weight at night.
No, not at all. Not at all.
See, I never get emails about the magic in my books. I would get emails about the fucking guns. You do know it's not a clip, it's a magazine. Fuck you. Deacon's a redneck guy. He calls it a clip. That's what he does. But anyway, I digress. The magic has changed a bit because at the end of book 3, the bad guy, the main witch Selene, punches a hole in the universe, the multiverse actually, because I rip everything off of DC Comics. So yeah. Seriously, the first thing I ever read was a fucking comic book. It is influential. So she punches a hole in the multiverse, and in book 4, which I'm writing now that my wife is really lucky me to finish it, there's a magic using creature that comes over, and it's completely different from everything Dickens dealt with before. So it has changed.
In my case, it didn't so much change as evolve. The first 6 books, the Retriever series, it was all very straightforward and it was very personal. Each talent did things their own way as they were taught by their mentor. Very much line of training. In Paranormal Scene Investigations, we start discovering forensic magic, where they're trying to use it as a group to do things that had never been done before, to follow the trace of magic and find people who had been committing crimes with magic. So I had to learn an entire new science of I knew how the magic worked, but I learned that it could be done in a group setting as well as an individual art. Which, again, yeah, you don't realize that you know this stuff until you go, but what if, and then all of a sudden the wizard brain comes back and says, I know! And you're like, okay, we have the answer. But in those 4 books, the Paranormal Scene Investigations, everything that I thought I knew for certain about the magic changed as the characters learned to do new things with it.
Yeah, a lot of the magic changed. For the Mary Gentry books, I didn't know that she was going to get hooked up with deity as she did. I didn't realize we were going to have deity manifestation on such a regular basis, and nor did I know that we were going to have that magic be able to save real-life soldiers in foreign lands who called on Mary and on the goddess. That was totally unexpected, and it's one of my favorite surprise aspects of the magic system changing. The other thing in her is I didn't realize that human wizards were going to be adept at magic, so that was a surprise. Now, the Anita books, and what's changing the magic system there that caught me by surprise is the sex. I'll be honest, I wasn't planning on it, not to this extent, and certainly, and that it would become intrinsic to some of the magic system. I had no idea that it was going to be. And the thing is that once I set up my systems, I don't cheat on them. And that is that once the Endure was real, I couldn't just fix it. A lot of people were pissed about it. And they wanted me to just fix it. Well, I've set this uber power up. It doesn't just fix it. If you just fix it, then your world isn't real. And the same thing when you bring on a major villain. If you can just instantly fix them, then they're not a major villain, they're a minor villain. So this sex magic totally caught me by surprise and has changed completely from how I envisioned it. And so, but some people have trouble dating, and I have to say that on paper and in my own head on notes that never ever reach the page, I realized that without it, Anita probably would still be like she was in the first few books, alone, not dating anybody seriously, and very, very unhappy, and probably dead. Because if we didn't have that kind of power to tap into, she wouldn't have survived some of the adventures. So, I don't know. Magic is one of those things that you bring it into your books and you let it go, and it sounds like most of us are fairly organic writers, which means that we follow where the muse leads. We follow those ideas and we don't know where they come from. Not entirely. Sometimes we can trace them back, but often we really can't. And that's part of the magic, and part of the thing that's hardest to explain, and part of the most fun to write.
For Persephone, as her power has grown, her sense of responsibility about what she's got to do has grown, and I think I pay more attention on the page to presenting her as taking it seriously, what's been given her as a responsibility, more than making more of a light show magically for her.
Laurel said something important before, that as writers we try to create magic systems that are consistent, that have rules that are going to work over time. But then, as writers, we also, many of us, create villains who spend their entire careers trying to push the envelope of those very rules that we set up. And so, in order to deal with them, our heroes or heroines then have to also push the envelope of the magic system. And so, having had time to listen to my esteemed and far more intelligent than I colleagues speak of the way their magic systems have morphed, mine have morphed as well, because Ethan is constantly responding to the latest big bad who has pushed the envelope of the magic to some place where he then has to go.
What impact does your protagonist's use of magic have on those closest to him or her? To them. I'm sorry, I'm using the incorrect pronoun. It's 10 o'clock.
She's going first.
Linda, you're up.
Damn it.
She thinks she gets away from me when she sits there.
I'm hiding, you can't see me.
It doesn't work like that, I'm sorry.
Damn it.
I'm not tall enough to hide you.
Okay, I forgot the question. No.
How does Persephone's use of magic impact
Right.
her?
In my stories, the magic can make a werewolf change uncyclically. Is that a word?
Yes.
It will be now.
We're writers, we make up shit.
It stirs energies enough to cause the change to start, but not enough to finish it. And if a werewolf is caught half-formed, the police are supposed to shoot him. But if the pack can get to him, they're going to stash him somewhere and let him live out their natural life in a cage, which somehow they think is better. Persephone's boyfriend is the king of the werewolves. He can change on his own, but she did a spell, using the ley line, of course, that harnessed enough power to make them change, and when they went through their next natural change, they kept their man minds when they were werewolves. So I'm going to go to that's she's created a scenario for them where they don't have to be the beast if they don't choose to be in that time.
Cool. The impact of the magic system on the people near my protagonist is immense. As Mary is gained in power, so have those around her. As the goddess has blessed her, so is blessed those that she loves and cares for. Grace spreads. For Anita, she literally would not be dating or in love with the people she's in love with without the magic system. In a way, I finally realized years after I'd written some of the books that the Ardua for Anita is basically a way of taking away social anxiety. I know that sounds really weird because it's like being given a roofie for social anxiety or something, but she was not comfortable in her own skin, not comfortable with herself. She didn't see her. She just didn't go through the world seeing herself as someone who connected with people very much. And so the magic is actually, as I wrote the books, I got tired of killing people. We had such a high kill count. I got tired of people dying all over the place. I just got tired of it. And at some subconscious level, I came up with a way to gain power to save everybody through love instead of death. We still kill enough people, but I would rather save people. I'd rather save people through love or lust or whatever than slaughter them. So it'll be interesting to see how the books evolve, because I really don't know. The book I'm currently writing is we're going back and revisiting some of the zombie stuff in ways that I haven't before, because I want to look at that magic system. But my whole darn Nah, okay. My whole damn series was taken over because I did not kill Jean-Claude in book 3. I planned on it, because I did not kill him. That was the beginning of our slide towards being attracted and drawn to people that we didn't understand, and then we needed to grow as a person.
What was the question again? Sorry.
Sorry, I had talked too long.
The protagonist's use of magic, how does that affect those close to them? Maybe don't.
Through the 10 books, I have multiple protagonists, but the two constants are when working with other talents, there's levels of talent, and there's a lot of jockeying for position and jealousy that can come out of that, because if somebody's very, they call high res, they have higher status. And that can lead to, as I said, to jealousy, which leads to a loss of control, and control is what makes you able to control talent, to be able to handle talent. So it's very much a risk if you let that eat at you. The risk for non-talents, for humans, is basically internal scarring if you get too close. But there's also the risk of addiction, that pleasure-pain feeling of being too close to current. One of the characters has to deal with that because he likes it a little too much. But those are threats that carry through when you get too close to that magic.
Yeah, the only magic that Deacon really knows is the disappearing bullet trick. He doesn't use magic, hates magic. Again, magic is evil in the Deaconverse, so in book 3, there's a character that we discover has been using magic that Deacon didn't know about, and the result is tragedy untold.
Dresden using magic on the people closest to him is it just ruins their smartphones. The use of magic doesn't so much get the people near Dresden in trouble as the way he chooses to use it. Harry's he's got to pick a fight with the worst people out there. And okay, he doesn't always pick a fight. Okay, he's got to pick a fight with the worst people out there. And that has consequences, but that's got really less to do with magic than it does with the fact that Harry is, can be a belligerent person, and when needed, for the most part. But the actual use of the magic less so, because Harry's kind of got it under control. The people who don't have it under control, all kinds of horrible things happen, but not for Dresden.
The core relationship in the Thief Taker novels is between Ethan, the hero, and Saphira Price, who is his rival in Thief Taker. And Saphira is everything Ethan is not. She is successful and beautiful and wealthy and influential and evil as can be, although she's never the villain. She's just his nemesis throughout the series. And so they deal with each other all the time, and their relationship, it's the best part of writing the series. So in the first book, Ethan has magic, and she doesn't, and that is the only thing that keeps her from totally kicking his ass all the time. It's his one ace in the hole. So of course in book 2, she hires, as one of her toughs, a conjurer who's working for her. And of course at the end of book 2, I have this conjurer and Ethan become really good friends. So now in book 3, she's dealing with the fact that she has this conjurer, but she senses that this conjurer and Ethan are working together more often than he's working for her. So that's the core relationship, and magic has become kind of, it's the cue ball in their pool game. It's the one that they are using to hit at each other all the time.
This is going to be my last question for you guys, and we'll take audience questions after that. So Erica over here by the post has a microphone. If you wish to ask a question, you can line up back there along the wall and move forward. So we'll do that. But in any case, if you could tell us one magical law from your system that you think people would think was maybe somewhat amusing, what would it be?
One magical law. Okay. All right. This comes from the first book as well. The magic, it needs a fuel that comes from something living. So it can be blood, it could be grass, it could be leaves. At one point, Ethan gets hurt really badly and he pukes onto the road in front of him, and for want of something better to use to fuel a spell, He uses the puke. Pack it in, pack it out.
The most amusing thing will probably show up in the next book. That feels good. That is the dark power to which I
Sets everybody up.
I need a moment.
For me, I guess it's just the ripping off of the Zatanna DC Comics thing where the one character always has to speak her spells backwards.
Yeah.
It's just her shtick, it's what she does.
One of the rules that is hammered into every young talent is do not source from the local power plant. Because people get really pissed when you plunge the entire city into a blackout.
And I've been trying to think, is there a law or rule of magic in my series that's amusing? And there are amusing moments and witticisms, but I don't think my magic system as a whole is funny. But I guess the most amusing is the fact that Anita has, in the early books, has Larry Kirkland as a trainee animator to Raise the Dead. And anybody ever live on a farm and slaughter chickens? If you don't slaughter them just right, and you cut a head off a chicken, what does it do? It runs around, and the blood goes everywhere. Well, the same thing happens in the cemetery if the trainee loses grip on the chicken. So that was probably one of the more amusing moments. Though, you know, if you were actually there having the chicken blood spill all over you, it's really not amusing. Yeah. It's only amusing after you tell it to other people.
Persephone's grandma she has her witticisms, her one-liners, and things she throws in there. I'm not going to give you examples. You got to go find them.
Okay, we'll start over here with the first question.
The microphone's not on, apparently.
Just shout. Just yell.
Ted?
Just walk up and ask.
A couple of you, dear hearts, have already touched on this, but do you prefer in your worlds to use magic as another tool in the toolbox that your character can attempt to control? Or do you prefer that magic is this force that will change your character either for good or evil?
Yes.
Both.
I'll take option B.
Magic's just a tool. What you do with it is what determines whether it changes.
I'm a tool too.
I can't tell you how long he's been waiting to say that. I mean, really, you can feel the energy.
I didn't want to say it.
Okay, next question.
Hi. I'm really loud and off the mic, sorry. I just want to thank you guys for being here, and Laurel in particular. You've helped me through a lot of dark times, and personally, thank you. But, and also Jim, I've met you before with Randy at New York, but I just wanted to ask, I teach 3rd grade, and I have a couple reluctant writers, and what would you tell them to inspire them if they're into the genre of sci-fi and into the genre of just magic and things like that, but they can't get it down on paper?
What do you mean they just have ideas but they don't write them down? Is that what you mean?
They just can't seem to get it to paper from their mind. They're brilliant, but they just can't get it down.
Have you heard of Dragon Dictate?
Dragon Dictate? No.
Dragon Dictate is a program that if you practice with it, it will take what you say and type it on your computer. So if you're dyslexic, if you have a lot of issues, you can use something like Dragon Dictate, and you can speak your stories, and it will type it for you. Now you have to train it to your voice, so there's a learning curve, but you might try a piece of software, go to your school, I don't know what your process is at your school, and can you imagine a bunch of 3rd graders with Dragon Dictate? I I mean, it could be incredibly fun. So you could do that. If that's what they're having trouble with, you can do that. That would be my first suggestion.
They'd start out just cursing into the program over and over. They'd sound like little tucks.
I've actually worked with young writers with similar situations, and the most important thing you can tell them is nobody's going to see it unless you want them to see it. So write whatever you want. Just scrawl, write sideways, write in crayon, it's okay. Nobody's going to look and nobody's judging until they're ready to show it. And that usually unlocks it. Really? I'm not being graded? I'm not being judged? No, it's just for fun.
So these are third graders, just like eight-year-olds?
They're about 8, 9. Most of them are 9 by now.
Yeah, just give them a good eye punch.
Okay.
Write the shit. Works in my house. Yes. That's what my wife does to me. Write your shit.
Can y'all think of some of your earliest personal experiences that motivated or inspired you to write about magic?
I want to.
Reading. I mean, I spent most of my second and third year in the hospital and came out reading very early because they wouldn't let me do anything else. But reading fantasy made me want to do this. I can do this. I can do this better than some of them. I had an ego as a kid. That's what being out of me by the world.
And that's the first time I've seen that.
But yeah, it's reading stories made me want to tell stories.
I think for me, it was the fact that I was raised in a household where ghost stories weren't fiction. Ghosts were accepted as real. I grew up hearing my uncles and my grandmother tell stories about real ghost experiences, and and I was told raw head and bloody bones would get me if I was bad, not the boogeyman. So magic seemed much more real at my house growing up. Are we losing someone off the edge of the stage?
Just the moderator, we're fine.
Okay. Just keep talking.
We can cuss all we want now.
We are now immoderate.
Lock the doors.
But I think for me, it was the fact that if the people who were raising me, the adults that were supposed to give me my idea of reality, believed absolutely sincerely in things that go bump in the night, then they have to be real, because my grandmother wouldn't lie to me. I got taken to the principal for this very thing because my grandmother wouldn't lie and wouldn't say bad words, and that's a whole nother story. I grew up thinking shit was not a curse word because my grandmother said it and she wouldn't say anything bad, and I actually ended up repeating it in front of a student who turned me into a teacher who couldn't get past my logic if my grandmother wouldn't say anything bad, so thus it can't be bad, all the way to the principal, who, in the face of my childish surety, sent me home with no punishment. Just said, ask your grandmother. And I said, I was so furious, and I said to her, Granny, they were just so mean. They said you say bad words. She says, what do you mean? And she says, they said shit's a bad word. But I said it wasn't because you said it and you wouldn't say anything bad, right? I can still see the look on her face to this day.
That principal was cold.
And she said, and she finally, and she says, well, actually, it is a bad word. And I said, you say bad words? And she never said it again in front of me. But I digress completely. But that is it. I was raised believing that magic could be real.
D&D.
Devil worship and novel writing.
My first novel was actually a D&D plot that I took people through as a dungeon master, and they were driving me absolutely out of my freaking mind because they wouldn't behave and do what I wanted. And one of the people said, this is just a novel, and you're irritated us because we won't behave like a character in your book. Why don't you just go write it? So I did.
For me, it was theater. I was at summer camp, and I was cast as Bilbo Baggins in The Hobbit. And I had never read Tolkien, and I didn't know anything about it, but I was totally captivated by the story, and that sent me on the dark spiral that led me to all theater.
Yeah, for me it was comic books with Doctor Strange, and House of Mystery, and Madame Xanadu, and all the creepy, stupid shit that was going on back in the 70s. And Robert E. Howard.
Yes.
Robert E. Howard was such a fucking influence on me. I say it almost every
He has to say it every question.
Yes. Read Robert E. Howard. Fuck's sake, read it.
Howard Lloyd Alexander. That explains.
Wait. Your box between I'm Howard. Robert E. Howard was my influence as well.
Fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah.
C.S. Lewis.
I would just say, sorry. I would just say that I have 4 boys, so writing is escapism for me. It's very necessary escapism. It's therapeutic.
Cheaper than therapy too.
Oh, yes.
So one of the things I've always loved about Magic is that it opens up a new dimension for the characters to interact with the world and the other characters. And that leads to a lot of unspeakably clever things happening. I was just wondering what, if any, clever thing your character's done that you're most proud of, or that you enjoy doing the most.
T-Rex. You've never read, there's a book where Dresden's up against a bunch of necromancers, and they're going around getting all the oldest corpses that they can get, because the older corpse is, the more power you can put into it and make it a mightier construct that you can then go battle on the necromancers with. And in the midst of this, Dresden goes and gets the bones of a T-Rex, a Tyrannosaurus Sioux from the Field Museum in Chicago. And I got a 65-million-year-old corpse now.
Well, and I've told you this before, last year at DragonCon. That book, when you did the replacement of the heartbeat with the rhythm, that was where I put your book down and said, Jim Butcher, you're a motherfucking asshole. That was so good. Why didn't I think of that?
Yeah, and that was just because I needed some reason to have that pun for the title.
I can't remember the question.
Particularly clever magical thing.
Yeah, something you're particularly proud of.
Intelligent, but I don't really. I'm clever. That I'm particularly proud of. I'm particularly proud that we survive every book. I'll pass for now.
Don't pass it this way. Pass it
For me, it's in one of the PSI, the Paranormal Sea Investigations books, where they managed to completely create a spell on the fly to backtrack events and replay them as shadows, basically. As I said, they're creating forensic magic as they go along with no guidebook. And they say, well, why can't we do this? And figure out a way to do it. And they were, these characters are 20-somethings. Nobody's ever told them because you can't. So they do.
That's a really powerful thing.
I don't think, I really do think I'm going to come to the whole, clever, we survived. We killed the bad guy, or they didn't kill us. We survived. If she drank, that's what we do at the end of every book. We have other hobbies, but...
So it's after 10, you can talk about
No children present?
I don't think it matters at this point.
I have a rule, actually. Cursing they hear every damn day. Sex education for your child is not my job.
We don't have anybody under the age of 16 in here, do we?
It's after 10.
The question stands. I have had people bring kids under 10 to my talks, to me on tour. And when I was reading the books aloud, that was part of what I did every stop. And I literally had a few moments where I was looking at the kids about 5 or so, and I'm going, nope. Not my job to educate your child. I can't believe you brought them for this. That's one of the reasons that the sex scenes are usually at least 50 pages in.
That's the clever thing.
Thank you. I just thought of it. I thought of it as a moral choice on my part.
Okay. Next question.
This is for Laurel. You mentioned Bloody Bones, and I know a long time ago you said you didn't bring Fae into Anita's world because it was just simply too many monsters. But will we be seeing any more Fae and having the moment of, oh fuck, where did my wall go in Anita? And does her cross still glow? Are we ever going to find out that? Has she gone too far?
Her cross is just fine. God is not the sex police. I'll say that again. God is not the sex police.
That's the new DragonCon t-shirt.
People seem to have forgotten there are a whole lot of other rules in the Bible that have nothing to do with sex, that have to do with you are a good person or a bad person when you look in the mirror. Can you look yourself in the mirror? And people who congratulate themselves because of their chastity score or their virtue score irritate me. Because if your only criteria for whether you're a good person or a bad person is how many people you've had sex with or under what conditions, then what does that say about the morals of the rest of your life?
Well, I was talking about the violence.
You're talking about the violence?
I am talking about the violence, not the sex. I have no problem
with
that.
Well, bless your heart. I spend so much damn time defending myself or defending Anita or whatever about the sexual content that I just automatically jump to that because almost nobody cares about the violence in this country. In Europe, they get mad about the violence. I don't, it depends. If you're an Old Testament Christian, I don't think you'll have any trouble. New Testament is a little harder, but Anita feels morally okay with everyone she's killed, and I stand behind that. Now, one scary thing for real life is that I'm Wiccan, and my priestess at one point, some of the other priestesses got together with her, and they were talking at a big convention, and they found out I was one of her people, and she said they suggested that I was paying a moral price for everything I killed fictionally. That literally this would karmically impact, and it would karmically impact her as well. And they were quite serious about it. So,
that was an appropriate reaction.
My reply was that I stood behind everyone she killed, and I still stand behind that. So, it would be an interesting thing if she'd gone too far that way for her cross to grow. But no, God seems fine with it. Not for violence. That would be interesting. That would really be interesting. And yes, you can just see it. As Jim said earlier, somebody asks a question, and then you go, oh, okay. And now you can just feel it sinking back into the subconscious. So her cross is fine. And there was another part of your question I've totally forgotten.
That was, what about, you mentioned in Bloody Bones,
yes.
After that, the Fae,
Yeah.
will we see that in Anita anymore?
I don't think we'll see more of that, of the Fae because of Mary Gentry. I feel like I had to divide them out because what I wrote in Book 5 in Bloody Bones didn't match what my research then showed me. I thought I knew more about it than I did because of my background. And I was wrong. So after I'd done enough research in anthropology, archaeology, and everything I could find of people who back in the 1700s, 1800s said they saw this kind of stuff, I was just too wrong. So I had to go off in a different direction. So probably not.
Okay, we have time for one more brief question.
This one's for Jim.
So, a friend of mine is in Florida, and he is extremely jealous of me actually being here, and I offered to ask a question for him. This is the question he posed. Jim, you've given Dresden and other characters access to the power of creation. You've given them soul fire. Why has no one kicked Dresden in the head and told him to actually use it to make something?
The people who really know what that he has it and what he's doing with it are kind of obligated not to tell him to do things with it. You know, that's kind of part and parcel of the whole angel gig. You're not actually allowed to step in and say, moron, go do that. And Dresden himself, since he's gotten hold of it, he hasn't really made a whole lot of stuff. He's kind of started it, and you know, I think if somebody grabbed him and pointed at him and said, look at the stuff you're making now compared to, you made this stick with your latest wizard staff, you made it with a pocket knife. You know, no lab, no anything else, and yet you've got a staff that is as good as your previous work. You know, then he would notice, oh, that's different, huh? But Harry's not all that bright in some ways. He's not big on self-reflection, and so it probably really hasn't occurred to him that he's making cooler stuff than he used to.
Let's give our panelists a hand. Thank you for being a great audience and for sticking it out for all day long, and we appreciate that. Thank you very much.